Good evening. Welcome to the Monday, March 11th, Kildover Hills Board of Commissioners meeting. We will call our meeting to order, and if you would please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Two comments before we move into our moment of silence. First, one of our animal control officers, Todd Olding, lost his father recently, so I ask that you please keep Todd and his family in your thoughts and prayers. And also last week, former K-9 officer Irie passed. You guys may recall back in 2013, this officer, our K-9 officer, was retired from our force, but we received notice from his handler that had basically adopted him after his retirement that he had passed. So with that, I ask you to please join us for a moment of silence. Thank you. Next, we have agenda approval.
I'll make a motion, we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion is second, any discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Okay, then we will move on to our public hearing this evening. We have one public hearing, and I will turn over to our town attorney to conduct the public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. I apologize for my tardiness. I got to get used to the seasonal traffic again. It gets earlier every year. There will be public hearing conducted this evening by the Kildover Hills Board of Commissioners. The following rules of civil procedure will apply to this hearing. A public notice of the hearing was published in the newspaper and posted on the bulletin boards of the town in accordance with statutory requirements for the subject matter. A copy of the public notice has been filed with the town clerk for entry into the official record of the hearing. The town clerk will be recording all oral comments in a concise and brief manner. Written statements shall be recorded in a similar manner and made part of the record of the hearing and shall be submitted in full to the town clerk. If speaking on behalf of yourself, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. A 5-minute exception will be made if a spokesperson is speaking on behalf of a group or if that statement was submitted in writing to the town clerk. All speakers must come to the microphone so that your statement can be taped and there shall be no debates. Please identify yourself and your address when you come forward. So this public hearing, please come to order. This hearing is called for the purpose of the Kildover Hills Board of Commissioners to consider a site plan review conditional use submitted by the Outer Range Brewing Station, outdoor dining activity area, and associated site improvements. We've got nobody signed up that wanted to speak at this public hearing, so I'll ask if anybody in the audience wants to speak.
And Mark Caston, you're here
Yes.
with us if we have any questions, the architect involved with this. Welcome. Discussion, questions, comments from the board?
One question. I might be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems a few years ago there was some issue with noise in that area. Is that being addressed, or is that a concern at all, or just?
I've met several times with the gentleman who's had issues with that. Talked to him. Those issues still exist. It's kind of one of those tough spots that he's in. We'd have to reconsider the whole noise ordinance in the commercial zone. I've been out to, I forget this gentleman's name, he lives on St. Clair Street several times now, and I always ask the police to come out and take noise readings at the time of the complaints, and there was, to my knowledge, Chief, and you may know as well, they were never non-compliant. It was always within our ordinance. So his issues they're still going on, but there's no violations at all. And none, at least not to my knowledge, I have none.
I've been out and seen the same. Each time I've been out there, it's not been allowed at all.
It's come from one gentleman and his, he speaks on behalf of his family, and it, obviously it's really upsetting and disturbing to him, but we haven't.
His, Mr. Hubert is his name. I met with him and the assistant chief, on at least one occasion, maybe two, I'm not sure, but on one occasion. And, I told him that we have been out there numerous times, he's called, they've never exceeded the noise limit, and there's been no other complaints, which is, if there was more than one, maybe it'd be something to look further into, or more, 2 or 3 or whatever. But I think it's just something that may just be annoying to one person, and it's not anywhere near us doing anything about it. I don't.
Other than that, I mean, I love this kind of improvement for the town and residents and all. I mean, it's a great idea.
Yeah, in recent months, well, of course, you all recall, they petitioned to have the brewery section of the building have the parking requirements changed, actually not the restaurant, because requirements of restaurant are higher for parking, which enabled them to open up some parking spaces and give them more ground coverage, so they were able to do this.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? If not, a motion would be in order.
I'll make a motion that we approve the conditional use Outer Banks Brewing Station outdoor dining activity area and associated site improvements as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second, any other discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on then to the first time set aside this evening for public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone in the audience to address the board on any topic of their choosing. We do ask if you are speaking this evening that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. If you're speaking as an individual, if you're speaking on behalf of a group, if you could please keep those comments to 5 minutes. We do have a list that we'll start from. We'll call names from there, but if you didn't sign up, no worries, we'll call from the floor as well. But we'll welcome first Mr. Mark Schaefer. If you'll come to the podium, please, and identify yourself by name and address. Welcome.
My name is Mark Schaefer. I live at 903 Sharon Court in KDH. I own Sandbar's Raw Bar and Grill in the Dare Center in Killed Up Hills. And I'd like to take this time to revisit a discussion on special events, specifically itinerant vendors and non-charitable special events. I've tried for 3 years to get, and I've worked in KDH, trying to get Bike Week. As it is right now, Kitty Hawk and Nag's Head really promote Bike Week. And they're going to get that ripple effect of benefit of jobs, having to hire more people for that week, the sales for their businesses, possible rentals, the tax revenue on all that. That event is going to bring people to KDH as it is right now. When you talk about Bike Week, you talk about longboards, what was DK's, Lucky 12, these are not places in KDH. And I'd like to be able to do that, especially in the Dare Center. There's plenty of room there that we can pull and make that, a central location to do that. The businesses in the Dare Center, I've already talked to them. They're very, very open to it, very excited about it. And even Washington Prime, the people that we lease from, can market that. I'd like to make that place like a hub for Bike Week. I had a discussion the other day with a friend of mine about the fair competition between towns, but I really don't think there is no competition because KDH isn't allowed to compete. For 3 years, I've tried to get Bike Week where I was, and it's not gonna happen. KDH or Nag's Head and Kitty Hawk are gonna have Bike Week, and they're gonna be successful, and their restaurants are gonna benefit from that, and the towns are gonna benefit from that. I just like KDH to do that as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak at this public comment time? Yes, Colleen, welcome.
Hello, Colleen Almany, 900 9th Avenue. I wanted to give the mayor and commissioners an update on our Killed Hills Neighborhood Watch Group. This past Saturday, we had our 3rd walkabout. We had 7 participants. Thank you. Commissioner Gray and Wenley for joining us. We had 7 people attend. We were able to visit over 100 homes. Again, the response from the people that we did talk to was overwhelmingly positive. They were very excited about our taking the time to come out and speak with them individually about keeping their homes and their vehicles safe. I wanted to let everybody know that we have another walkabout scheduled on March 23rd, which is 2 Saturdays from this week. We're going to meet again in the north side of Belk's parking lot, and we're canvassing the area down 3rd Street. Our next Neighborhood Watch meeting is on Thursday, April 18th, and we'll be joined by Chris Turner from the North Carolina Wildlife Commission. He's a biologist who's going to be speaking to us about coexisting with coyotes. And it's open for the public to come, and we'd love to have anybody who'd like to join us. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Colleen.
Would anyone else like to speak at this public comment time? Matt, welcome.
Matt Walker, 439 West Walker Street. I'm just here real quick on behalf of Surf Rider. We are going to be marching the parade on Sunday, so if anyone wants to join us, we're doing our usual don't drill off the coast spiel, wear some blue, and kind of represent numbers. We'll have some signs, or make some signs. I guess we're going to make signs. We'll put together, go to our Facebook page. Ivy's done all that, which is why I'm so clueless. But take a look. It's got all the info, and we'll certainly be lining up to do it. And then on that note, I'm sure Mayor Davies probably reported to you about our trip to DC a couple weeks ago. But as much as there's a really strong local and coastal opposition right now, it's not necessarily entirely fault of the food chain. So anything y'all can do to spread that word to our senators, and also on the state level, there's a letter going around right now that's been signed, I believe, by Representative Hanning, asking to oppose seismic testing and drilling, but I'm not sure that Steinberg signed the board. So if you want to make a call to him and ask him nicely to represent this part of the coast, that would be surely helpful. And we'll keep you posted as we move forward, but definitely this Sunday, and unfortunately probably more after that. Thank you very much for all your help up till now, for sure.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Would anyone else like to speak? Yes, Chip, welcome.
Chip Albany, 900 9th Avenue. I want to bring up the idea of having alternates on the planning board. As the second longest serving member on the board right now, as far as I know, we've never had an issue with not having enough people for a quorum. And it seems to me that we would require someone to come sit in the audience every meeting, just in case they would have to step in, and making sure that they're up on all the items that are going on in the town. And as a private citizen, we ask you all to be good stewards of our money. And the idea of trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist that would cost the town money just doesn't make sense to me. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this public comment time? Okay, thank you all for speaking. We'll move on to response to public comment.
I'm gonna ask Matt a question. Did you say we're blue? It's
Yes,
St. Patrick's Day.
I know.
They're blue-green.
Blue and green would actually mix well, I think. That's
Yeah.
nice. We're often green. Okay, there we go.
Matt, I have a question too. I was planning on marching with you guys and bringing my kids out there. Is it appropriate to bring candy to hand out, or is there gonna be stuff provided to give out, or are we just marching?
We generally don't do the candy thing, because, but we will be, I don't know, where's Ivy when I need her? She handles all this stuff. We don't normally do candy any of that, partially because we feel like a lot of times you throw in litter and all that stuff, just keep it down to a minimum, plus we're just slack, I guess, is part of it. But
I think that dentist association is throwing out candy.
Regarding, Mark, thank you for your comments. Chip, thank you for your comments. Since both of those are agenda items, we'll address those later this evening as we get to those items on the agenda and have more discussion then. And Colleen, thank you so much for those great updates and the great work that you and the Neighborhood Watch Group are doing.
Yes, thanks, Colleen.
I saw the picture and you were right, the t-shirts make a huge difference.
Yeah.
I mean, even Terry looked good in that t-shirt. But, no, it was a good picture, and I think the t-shirts, they were a great idea. It really makes a difference in how people perceive you.
I think his photo might have touched up.
All right, I'm gonna move this along, thank you. Great, okay, on to introductions and presentations. I'd like to welcome Tammy Montiel. She's the new Executive Director of the Community Care Clinic of Dare. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your support. We appreciate it. Let's give you a little background. I'll make it brief. The Community Care Clinic of Dare is a clinic that is there to provide financially challenged and uninsured adults living or working in Dare County access to free primary care medical services, medication assistance, health and wellness education, and access to ancillary medical and specialty referrals. 2/3 of our patient population suffer from one or more chronic disease conditions, which require careful monitoring and medical management. Over 40% are gainfully employed and considered the working class poor, with really no other option for health coverage. The Community Care Clinic of Dare effectively manages and treats low-income and poor adults that would otherwise have no access to medical care and medication assistance. This very vulnerable population would have no option but to remain undiagnosed, untreated, or forced to utilize the emergency room for their primary care, which is costly to all of us. We are committed to providing our community with extraordinary and compassionate primary medical care services, maintaining our standards of service excellence, and dedicated to exceeding the expectations of those we serve. The team at Community Care Clinic of Dare is honored and privileged to provide quality, dignified, and compassionate care to the uninsured adults living or working in Dare County. We have been in existence since 2004-ish, almost 14 years. And it's always baffling to me when I run into people even today that do not know who we are and what we provide. So that seems to be one of our biggest challenges. However, we do take care currently of over 526 patients. We have served over 4,000 patients since inception. We provide medication assistance, again, health and wellness education. All of those things are given to our patients for zero cost. We like that model. We hope we can stay with that model. Other models in neighboring counties charge a small fee for primary care and for medication. We do not do that currently. And just some numbers that are pertinent to Kill Devil Hills. We work in collaboration with many organizations. Project Access is a safety net organization that provides ancillary and specialty care donated by our local physicians and dentists. And let me tell you, they do a tremendous job. They provide a lot of free care to the folks living in Dare County. We provided 62 patients last year with free dental care. Many of those situations were acute issues that needed to be seen right away, and generosity of many of our local dentists provided that care. Specialty care, over 70 specialty visits were performed by doctors in our community that provided that for our patients. Diagnostics, several hundred laboratory visits, MRIs, CT scans, x-rays. All of these things are provided for free to our patients. So please spread the word and let people know who we are and what we're about. In the zip code of 27948, we took care of 171 patients last year. The value of just the specialty care and dental care is well over $100,000. Medication assistance is well over $500,000. Every year we work in collaboration with MedAssist out of Charlotte. They provide most of our patients with free medications. They do an over-the-counter event, which is open to everyone in our community, and it's going to be May 9th at the Fessenden Center and May 10th in Manu at COA. I encourage you all to come, to participate, to volunteer, and to come and see what they have on the shelves. You can help yourself to all the things they bring. They bring well over $200,000 worth of free medication, over-the-counter medication to the fine folks of Dare County. Any questions?
Tammy, I gotta admit, I'm not real familiar with the care clinic myself. I guess my question would be, is this something that previously people would go to social services for?
So people that go to social services are often referred to us. We work in collaboration with the Dare County Health Department. We work in collaboration with the hospital. They are all very big supporters and they help us sustain ourselves. We run mostly on state grants, local grants, and private donation. So often someone that goes to social services, if they are, let's say, on Medicaid, they would stay in that system. Our folks have access to no insurance, so they are really uninsured. Now, what's interesting about our model is we understand and are sensitive to the cost of living in Dare County. So we raised our income threshold to 300% of the poverty level, which is a very big number. And what that means is a family of four with an income of $76,000 a year would qualify for our clinic. So you will see that put on social media here soon, since we just changed that number. And hoping that we'll have a big influx of people that just don't have access. Maybe they're in between jobs, lost a job, or just simply cannot afford the high premiums for private insurance.
I think you answered my second question, was if you get referrals from Social Security.
We get
Social
referrals from
Services.
everybody. We also have, about 2 years ago, we implemented a program that anybody that went to the emergency room or an urgent care that left there that needed maybe help with a prescription medication, not narcotics. We don't deal with any narcotics. But let's say someone goes to the emergency room, they're discharged, they have a prescription for an antibiotic that's costly. They can come in and see us on a one-time basis. We like that relationship because it gets them into the facility. Once they see the facility, they're usually very impressed by it, and they want to make that their primary care home. So we have that relationship with the urgent cares and with the hospital. And with most of our primary care physicians on the beach will refer patients to us that don't have insurance or simply can't pay the copay or the $150 to go to urgent care.
Thank you. It's incredible just to know. It's heartwarming to know that we have that.
And I will tell you, we do have a small paid staff, but we have a litany of amazing volunteers that come back year after year after year after year. And some of those volunteers have been there since inception, so it's quite remarkable. But the people there really believe, like I believe, I'm very passionate about providing care to people so that that's one less barrier to them becoming productive citizens and being a good neighbor, a good parent, a good everything.
Thank you for what y'all do.
Tammy, you may have mentioned this, but I didn't catch it. What are the days and times that the care clinic is open?
So we are open Monday through Thursday from 9 to 2, and we are working right now on varying our budget a little bit to increase those hours and those times. We also go down to Hatteras one day a month, and Dr. Sanchez, who's our medical director, also sees patients at our clinic one evening a month. So we try to hit everybody as far as times.
I need some more of these for Walgreens.
I will be happy to bring them to you
We
personally, John.
routinely refer folks your way, but people are constantly in need.
Well, we appreciate it. And, you know, the people I take care of, often in their lives, hear a lot of no's. No, you can't work here. No, you can't live here. No, you can't be here. So our mantra in our building is we are the yes window. We may not be able to help them with everything that they need, and perhaps they don't qualify for our services, but they will never leave our building without some option and some referral to some service that can possibly help them.
I recall, I think it was during my first term on this board, I believe Sheila participated also, that we were all of us board members were given a tour of the facility. We spent several hours there. It was very enlightening. I think that might be something maybe perhaps you could arrange at your convenience.
I would love to. In fact, NAGSED commissioners came through last week, and they're coming again next week. I had to do it in 2 groups. We're more than happy, and and anybody that would ever want to stop by and see what we do. Like I said, the big barrier seems to be people just don't know who we are and what we're doing. We have several volunteer physicians in the community too that donate services once a month, specialty care. But it's truly amazing what we do there. So please spread the word, and again, rat cars, come by for a visit, see what we're about. And I have people I know, my neighbors and friends that come there and are patients. So we are happy to take care of anyone that needs our help, and for the short term, for the long term. But to not have to make the decision to pay for your medication to keep you healthy and well in the workforce is just a wonderful thing to be able to offer those folks. Keep them working, keep them feeling good about themselves, not have to worry about paying their rent versus paying for their diabetic medication or their hypertensive medication. It's really important, so hopefully we'll continue on. And thank you again for your support, we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tammy, and everything you all did. Thank you.
Come see us.
Very much. And, you know, really, one of the big ways we can help them is spreading the word. I think they have the capacity to take care of more folks, and there's definitely more folks in our community that need help. They just don't necessarily know that that door's open, despite efforts that they've made. So anything we can do to, you know, share that in the workforce or in the circles that we work in.
Does anybody know, last year they didn't have one, in previous years, there was a real big Hispanic Heritage Festival in Deer County. And that's one of the biggest opportunity groups, I would imagine, for the care clinic, for people who need care, may not be aware that this service exists. That was a great touch point to kind of reach a lot of folks. I don't know if that happens anymore or
Yeah,
not.
I will touch on that for a second. We have about 41% Latino population. And, you know, many of those patients work 2 and 3 jobs and have a very difficult time getting to us because of the driving situation. And I believe, I do sit on the LRC committee, the Latino Resource Coalition, and apparently they did not have that festival last year. I'm not sure why they did not do that, but we reach out to them. We do have a Spanish translator on staff. And I just did some outreach there today. I went to some of the local restaurants to talk to some of the staff, and I would encourage any other restaurant folks here, if they would ever want me to come talk to their staff. My husband owns a restaurant, so a lot of our folks, you know, can't afford insurance, so they come to the clinic and they're taken care of there. So I'm more than happy to do that in any capacity, but we try to hit that population as much as we can. And a lot of that population, seems like word of mouth and neighborhood connections and that kind of thing do help.
And certainly feeling comfortable, and if you haven't been, I would take Tammy up on the opportunity to get a tour. It's a beautiful facility, and you'll feel like you're at your regular doctor's office. You do a remarkable job.
Thank you. And I'll end it with this, you know, it was the original medical center of the Outer Banks. So we're very frequently, I'll get patients in their 40s and 50s and they'll say, I'm pretty sure I had stitches here when I was like 5 years old. And I'm like, you probably did. So I'm a big believer in karma. So I feel like, you know, it started off as a medical center serving the community, and now it's come full circle to serving another part of the community. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on then to new business, item 1, planning and committee vacancies. We have a appointment for the planning board to consider, as well as the personnel board. There is one position on the planning board that will expire in April 2019. That is currently filled by Howard Buchanan, who desires to be considered for reappointment. There's also one position on the personnel board that will also expire in April 2019. Christine Stafford holds that position, and she desires to be reconsidered or considered for reappointment as well. So that's what the pleasure of the board is.
I'd like to make a motion that, want to do them both?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion that we reappoint Howard Buchanan to the planning board, and we reappoint Christine Stafford to the personnel board.
I'll wholeheartedly second that.
Okay, a motion and a wholehearted second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item number 2 under new business. This is the draft ordinance, chapter 111, special events, charitable events. And I will turn this over to Meredith or Debbie or both.
Well, actually, while Meredith, if she wants to come up to the podium, I'll just speak briefly as to what's been presented to you. Some time ago, members of the board had indicated a desire to revisit the ordinance itself and possibly make some changes that would allow for maybe some parking, ease up, or whatever you want to word that. And what we presented to you tonight is basically just the ordinance cleaned up. There was a lot of things in it that were no longer applicable, to what we were doing. We haven't really changed anything, waiting for your guidance as to what exactly you would like to see changed. I know there's been some discussion about maybe being a little more, flexible with allowing a business to remain open, while having an event in the parking lot. That is not totally restricted. It's simply restricted to the degree of the available parking. But that may be where you want to ease up on some of the parking regulations. So all of those things are on the table. We're just simply, Meredith has just gone in there and cleaned up the language that no longer needed to be in there. And I think put it in a very, easy to read and understand format. And of course, she's here to answer any questions you may have as well as myself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions for Meredith, or?
Or direction for us is what you would like to see.
Yeah, if you don't have questions about what's presented, which was just the cleaning up of organization and some language and definition, well, then really the discussion more goes to the direction of providing guidance for them to look at modifications that we may want them to make.
So I have a few questions and some ideas to bounce around too, that you kind of really encapsulated what I was thinking before is how can we update some of the parking regulations to allow businesses in the commercial zone to host non-charity events on their property and remain open at the same time. That really is the question that I'd like to see answered in a nutshell. One of the first things I saw when reading through this is the ordinance prohibits non-charity events unless approved by the Board of Commissioners. Personally, I would like to see the approval process turned over to the town manager. We would have an ordinance in place that clearly defines what is prohibited and what isn't, and then the town manager can independently make that decision.
If I may just explain, the reason behind that was that, you really can go from one scale to the other on things that people may or may not want. And at the time that was put in the ordinance, that was the desire of the board at that time to actually, be in a position that a special event would be on an agenda so that it would be, your community would be aware of it. And the board would have the opportunity to hear all the particulars as to, how the parking was gonna be handled, et cetera, all the different things that would need to be considered. Just feeling that it gave, kind of going back to what was said earlier, it kind of put everybody on the same
A level of
page.
transparency too.
Yes,
If I could add, there's a range in that non-charitable events that makes it extremely difficult for staff to write regulations. Being that a non-charitable event could be as simple as a business bringing all their merchandise into their parking lot and selling it right, out in the open for their profit every week, every day. To Bike Week or, some of the car shows or things of that nature. Those are big events that are community events, that the board, you'd want to know about them and make sure that they were gonna be beneficial to the town and not hurt some businesses and things like that. But I don't know that you would want anybody to be able to do anything for profit, anytime, anywhere. And to be able to write those regulations or to make that choice, what is overall beneficial to the town versus what is overall beneficial to X property owner who wants to sell widgets every weekend. That's a difficult decision for us to write in an ordinance form. It would be arbitrary, and therefore, if you bring these non-charitable events, which are, I would think y'all would want the big events, to the board, you would have the ability to review them, make sure that it was a benefit to everybody in town, what you would allow, whether you want to allow food trucks for those events, or whether you want to not because it'll hurt this business or hurt these restaurants, or if you want to allow people to sell merchandise outside, or if you want people to be able to have rallies in their parking lots, and all those things would be event-specific, and it would leave it up to the board to be able to regulate those event-specific, because we can't think of every event that would be event-specific. So that's why the non-charitable were put in the prohibited unless approved by the Board of Commissioners. And they bring in the same application, it would simply have another level of review at the board level versus at the staff level. And it could be much less restrictive depending on what the board's desire is for various events. So that's why that is written like that.
Makes sense.
Okay.
I got a couple questions. So, from what you're saying is each owner of a business would have to apply for every time we had a special event?
If Bike Week, let's use Bike Week because we spoke about Bike Week, so
Say
I'm
we
gonna
got
use it if that's okay.
3 restaurants
Okay.
and 2 other,
So,
whatever it is.
Bike Week would come into the town. You know, Harley Davidson used to come in, they were a charitable event. Harley Davidson themselves took the proceeds from the Bike Week and donated them, and we changed the ordinance for Bike Week to allow for-profit vendors. And, so the leather people came in, they used to do it across from Shutters, that was owned by Frank Gajar, or it was owned by Nick Nuzzi. Frank Gajar hosted it at the Portical, but the empty lot that didn't have a business on it was approved for those vendors. They since found a different place. We did not ever deny them. They found a new place to live. That wasn't a choice by the town of Killable Hills, they just stopped asking. But if you wanted that, the Bike Week sponsors or organizers would come to the town and say, here's what we're doing. We have blank, blank, blank businesses, because I'm sure the businesses go to the Bike Week organizers to try to get on their agendas, and, you know, I know that Lucky 12 does. They have a specific time and place for the oysters and loud bike thing. You know, they get the motor, you know, see how many RPMs they, whatever. And they would come to us and say, these are the businesses that are gonna have events, here's the day of the event, here's how we're gonna run it, here's how long it's gonna be, here's the music that's gonna be there, or here's what amenities are gonna be there, or here's what vendors we're hoping to put there. And that would come to you guys for you to approve. But, you know, Bike Week is not a willy-nilly thing, it's a very organized event, or it used to be, you know, when they were coming to us, they knew to the minute what was on the agenda and how they wanted it to go. And that would simply come to you guys for your approval.
When I was reading through it, it seemed a little confusing about how they would apply. I was just thinking it'd be nice to be able to simplify it a little bit, and then the parking restrictions, if it's off-season, I would think that a restaurant owner wouldn't want to give up so many of their parking spots. I would think they would want to balance that so that they get some input, but they're not so much that they're losing parking spots for their restaurant or wherever else it might be. So, I mean, I think there's a couple on the board that might have been to a few of these things before. And we were just trying to make it, I think it's a good idea. And I'd forgotten about Portical, to be honest with you.
That was a home place for years.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. That's the only one I can think of.
And they had a big tent city up in the lot next door with all the leather vendors, and they used to bring in the trailer that had the noise to see how loud your bike could go.
Dyno machine, that's what.
Dyno machine. And they told us exactly when it was gonna happen. They told the police department, were you here? They told the police department exactly when the dyno machine was gonna be there, how long it was gonna be there. I mean, it was very, very organized event. It was very well run. They just simply found a better place, in their opinion. We never denied them.
So right now, if somebody, I think the parking might be an issue in a lot of places. Do you think that's a problem, or could that be
So what the regulations,
lessened somewhat to make it easier to comply, or?
so if it's a non-charitable event, that would be up to the Board of Commissioners to decide with the application, okay? If it's a non-charitable event. If it's a charitable event, meaning that the organizers are donating their profit after expenses to an organization, that would be administratively approved. And what the regulation is now is that either the business has to close to use the outdoor required parking, because there's a required parking allotment for a business, so you can't overdo it or you'll have them all over the street and everywhere else. Or they have to have extra parking spaces that exceed the required parking, and then they can use them anytime they want to.
Or if they can show that they have off-site parking that's usable.
Correct.
Is undeveloped, is that considered parking, like in the spot you're talking about in the field next to Protocol, or?
That field had a parking, agreement with Protocol.
So
Protocol
you
wasn't
have to-
open.
Right,
So the tent city closed and Protocol opened at night for music, but they weren't open at the same time. So there wasn't a parking conflict.
so the underdeveloped in that field can't be, you can't.
If you get a agreement to park somewhere that's not, gonna conflict.
Undeveloped.
that doesn't conflict with the, business parking, or if the board changes the rules for non-charitable events, charitable events.
Meredith, give an example of, and because you and I talked about this, for me trying to get it in my head.
I can give an example with the Dare Center.
That's what I'm wanting.
Dare Center was built in the late 80s, early 90s. Someone correct me when I'm dead wrong. Somewhere in there. And there was a parking requirement of 1 to 200 and 1 to 100 for restaurants. And since then, we've relaxed our parking requirements, realizing that that's really too much parking. Like, you don't see the Dare Center parking lot full, not even on Black Friday. So throughout time, the parking requirements have changed. I think it's 1 to 350 now for shopping centers over a certain square footage. So there is an excess amount of parking at the Dare Center. And I don't know what it is, but let's say it's 25 spaces. If someone wanted to do a charitable special event at the Dare Center and utilize those 25 extra parking spaces that are not required by ordinance, we can approve that. If they wanted to use 35, then their business or a business would have to be closed, and those 10 extra parking spaces would have to be from something that's not open, that wouldn't require those parking spaces during the event.
And if they wanted to host a non-charitable event,
Come to
that's
you
gonna
guys.
come to the board to decide, and we could look at.
And it's the
parking
same
and whatever
application, it's the
concern.
exact same process, it's just one additional step. And the application process, you can find on, page 4 of your, ordinance. And it has, not one person can do anything more than 4 times in 365 days.
Within 30 days, it's,
You know, what's the levels again?
it says the same vendor can't do it within 30 days, am I reading that correctly?
They can't have a double event, meaning that they can have 4 a year, but they can't have one day away from the other one, because it would basically be the same. It's gotta be a 30-day separation between charitable and non-charitable events.
So just for example, I think this year we've got Bike Week 1 month and the
I would think,
Auto-
I think the organizers are probably gonna be different people, correct? Same organizer
So
can't be,
I
same
guess that's what I'm trying to
permittee,
get at. I just need clarification.
no
That's-
permittee.
When it says sponsor, I thought that would be the restaurant or the.
No,
the
It's,
business.
it's the event.
Okay, but that makes sense.
And if a recommendation is to clarify that language with a separate definition, we can do that. So if
Absolutely.
that is consistently confusing, then we can make a recommendation for that.
I know that that's how we do it. So,
Okay, yeah, well,
if
the
it's not
sponsor to
through
me
you
is
guys-
the person where you're having, the tents or whatever. To me, that would be that, but, and just for example, Dare Center is a pretty big location. But I'm thinking of places like Roosters, although I know they've got off-site parking, but let's just say their parking lot. In the wintertime, I don't think they even use all of the parking that they have at their restaurant. Or it could be any other, it could be Goombays, it could be wherever. But I would think that the owner would want to try to
Yeah, and to draw that line,
balance that out
to
somewhere.
draw that line by ordinance, it would need you guys to say that 10% of their parking can be used in non-charitable events, something like that, because there are some businesses that are very busy in the winter. You can't gauge the success of a business and their need for their required parking based on the season. It would be arbitrary, Casey, back me up here. It would be arbitrary and we can't make that decision and then it blow up in our face and we get taken to task as to how we made that decision. It has to be very clear.
Right, but it is something that the board will
Absolutely.
establish a percentage, if that's the desire that you want to go in. We just need to know what that number is.
I would just like to see it simplified some more. I mean, obviously, it must be easier in other towns if we're not getting any, and I know we got people that want it.
But I wonder if some of that reason is because they didn't know. They didn't know you could do an application, or they didn't know.
I think in some of these events, in some of the other towns, you see parking on the side of US 158.
How
And
did,
that's not something we want to allow.
I noticed
Not with
that,
our sidewalks.
they had events at Protocol in the past where they've actually used their parking spaces, where they had vendors set up there. How did they do that?
They did it during Bike Week and Protocol wasn't open in the daytime and the Tent City stuff closed at night and Protocol opened, so the required parking was never in dual. And if they did it different than that, then they,
were open.
well, then they violated their permit.
There were vendors in there.
They violate, now listen, if the vendors are inside of a building,
No, they were in the parking lot.
okay, then they violated their permit.
Gotcha.
Sorry.
I think the only reason somebody would want them to come is so they would come in and go in the business and buy food and drink. There could be Lowe's for all I know.
And any vendor can be inside of a business, we don't regulate that.
I mean, but I would think that's why they wanted them in the parking lot, because they're drawing people to
Sure.
come in and sell their products, not. I mean,
Right,
If
but
it's
you
not
gotta
helping you, why
have
would you want
somewhere
it?
for those, you gotta have somewhere for your restaurant customers to park if your parking lot's being used by
And
the vendors.
it's not the neighbor parking lot that they're trying to get their own business and now their entire parking lot's full with the people across the way and they're losing business.
But if the neighbor's
there's a
parking lot
balance
is a
that
doctor's
needs to
office
be-
or a dentist's office that's closed at
And they get
night,
permission.
then they get permission and they can use that.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Would it not be, and let me ask the attorney this, could we write an ordinance that would accept a certain percentage of the parking spaces for a special event or for a special use permit?
Yeah.
We could do that, correct?
Correct.
And we would be
As long as
required
it's
to
finite.
hold a public hearing?
I'm sorry,
We would be required to hold a public hearing?
for that amendment, I don't think so.
This is a zoning
So,
amendment.
yeah, so if you write into this non-charitable events that you wanna allow 10 or 15% of the required parking spaces to be used upon at any event as an allowable percentage, then that's the allowable percentage and we can enforce that. Again, the non-charitables are coming to you guys and you can let them use 100% if they've got a parking plan that's gonna work for you or they're shuttle busing or whatever they might do like they do at the event site. So, there's no rules on non-charitable event, that would be up to the board.
So can you put time restrictions on that as through the year, like maybe just off-season? I mean, you wouldn't want, I doubt if you'd have it in the summer anyway.
So,
But I wouldn't want tents set up in these parking lots in the summer when you know they're gonna be.
So there's two event timeframes. A charitable special event is allowed 365 days. That's 100% of, and that's on page 2. 100% of,
What's an example of that, Meredith? Just, like, we have our town do it at Lowe's or something like that? I don't know.
National Night Out, we had one day.
I'm not sure what
that,
else.
National Night Out is exempt because it's a government event.
So what would be a non-charitable one?
100% charitable event, or not, you said charitable event.
Well, the one that fits this category.
The Outer Banks Running Company does a run every year, 100% of their profits after expenses goes to whatever they choose. I think this year it went to Community Foundation for their Frostbite run. That is 100% charitable event. Now, if they wanted to have, and this is an exaggeration, but if they wanted to have Nike come and have a tent and Nike was gonna sell product, we have it sometimes, where there's an event and there's products sold, like blank company comes and has products for sale. They get to keep, the vendor would keep their money, but the organization and the event itself would donate their money after expenses. So Nike would keep their money of any shoe they sold, but the Outer Banks Running Company would still donate all their profits after expenses to whatever charity. That's still a charitable event. But to have those vendors that get money and get to keep it, it has to be in our shoulder season. So that is on page 3. It starts on page 3, and they're allowed September 30th through May 1st. If you're gonna have vendors that are for profit, it has to be in that time frame. Now, if that's where you would like to allow the parking to be more liberal, this is the section you would put it in, 111.06. If you want it to be more liberal everywhere, then we would have to put it in both sections.
I think that might be depending on how much percentage you let them have to how much of the year they could use it. But I mean, I think you're kind of boiling it down to something that's workable. It seems like it would be nice to make it a little bit easier to work it out. I mean, I would like to see it personally.
Meredith, I have a question. I just want to make sure I'm following everything 100%. If an application comes in for a non-charitable event in the commercial zone, it would come to us as a board to decide. The application would have a petition on how much of the parking they'd like to have forgiven for the event, and we decide, case-by-case basis.
For non-charitable events, yes, sir.
Non-charitable events.
They get to tell you what they want, and then you get to whittle it down with what you are willing to allow.
Okay.
And it would be to the what you think is to the benefit of the entire town.
Where is Relay for Life a good example of a charitable event?
Is what?
Relay for Life?
It is, that would be exempt because it's on Dare County property though.
Another example that you guys may remember was the polar plunge that the YMCA used to do for years and years at the Ramada, and they would use the Ramada's parking lot to stage. It was February or March polar plunge. It was super cold, but it was a charitable event. But Outback Steakhouse also set up their truck and they sold lunches. But that all worked because they were donating. They were covering their costs though, and they got paid for their food expenses. Yet there was donation money that was going to the YMCA. So partnership event.
Some of our surf contests are charitable events. They donate to Surfrider and several other, beach organizations.
But the vendor still gets to keep their money?
If it's in the summer, the vendor does not. If it's after September 30th, the vendor can.
So in the summertime, that's an ordinance that's already written. Can that be updated?
That's the ordinance that's in place now.
That's the one that's the September 30th through May 1st currently.
Because it's our high season and businesses are trying to do what they need to do, we limited the for-profits to the shoulder season.
Parking's at a premium. I'd like to see it at ease, but not at the expense of the neighboring businesses or whatever as far as parking and whatnot goes.
Well, even if it is eased and they're parking in someone else's parking lot, that can lead to other issues. We do get complaints sometimes when that does happen, whether it's not even a special event, sometimes.
Popular restaurants,
Right.
popular places, people park wherever they want to park, and we
And they can.
routinely get complaints.
Other places can tow them, which just isn't a good thing for anybody.
What would prevent someone who wanted to host a special event, but wanted to do it outside the parameters of September 30th through May 1st? They could submit a non-charitable application.
Both of them are non-charitable applications. It's just a matter if you have to provide a list of for-profit vendors or charitable vendors.
So let's say they ran their event, but at the end of the day, they decided they made so much money, they wanted to make a donation at the end of the event. I mean, technically, they could have gone through the process to come and have that event reviewed by the board as non-charitable. And what
They
they
still
do,
made a donation.
and make a donation.
Or if they don't want it to be 100%, that would technically, by our ordinance, be a non-charitable event. Let's say they're only gonna do 50% of their profits are gonna go to whatever organization, and the other 50% are gonna go to next year's event. so they can get startup money, that, you know,
Then it's gonna have to come before the board to
that'll come
be
to the board.
determined. So when you say is there latitude, I mean, honestly, there's a ton of latitude. It's a matter of whether it can go through administrative review or whether it needs to come to the board.
And either way, it's gonna go through the administrative review, as was mentioned in Meredith's, either in the ordinance or a memo. It goes through all the departments that might be affected. So you're already gonna have that review, kind of like you do at the planning board level when they get a site plan. The difference would be whether it's something that can be approved administratively, or if it comes to you with our recommendation based on what the staff has reviewed.
I keep thinking that, let's just say, for example, you've got 4 per year, 4 during the winter special events. You've got 10 businesses that wanted to apply, that's 40 applications, right? If you had 10 businesses want to apply for,
It'd have to be 30 days, each business application would have to be 30 days apart, so it would be hard for them to squeeze that into that September 30th to May 1st, if you're talking about 4 vendors. You can have 4 a year, and the same applicant can't apply again for 30 days.
now we're back to sponsor and applicant. You're calling the applicant, that's the business.
Whoever they put down as the applicant.
I think I'm confusing applicant and sponsor again. Before you were saying sponsor would apply, right?
So if you're saying,
But it wasn't the business. Now I'm thinking,
let's say the community care clinic, she left, but I'm gonna use her example, wanted to have something at the brewing station. Okay, 100% charitable event, they have it, and then the care clinic wants to do another one, and they wanna do it at Roosters. They have to wait 30 days. But if the community care clinic goes and has their event at the brewing station, and then Relay for Life comes in and says, 10 days later, and says they want their event at the brewing station, that's 2 different charities, same location, they would be allowed. But the care clinic can't do one 10 days apart. The care clinic would have to be 30 days apart, no more than 4 a year.
The place is the venue, not the sponsor, not the applicant, the place, unless it is the brew station wanting to do the event.
well, if we've got a, say, bike week, we've got an auto show, maybe it's an art show, maybe something else. You've got 4 different ones. I could see restaurants or whoever being a venue for all 4 of them.
They're not the permittee. The permittee is gonna be Dare County Art Council. That's the permittee.
If I was doing it, would I,
If-
who am I? as a restaurant?
You would have to go through whoever coordinates the bike week. So you'd have to go through Harley Davidson and make your spot one of their
I think the venues should apply
locations.
for the permit.
But then you're limiting the venue to the number of times they can have an event.
I can tell you that the brewing station has much more than 4 a year simply because they have,
Yes, so Brew Station would open the doors and then Tammy Montiel would come one week, next group would be, like you said, the surf rider, the next week would be somebody else, but the surf rider would be the one
You wouldn't
saying,
limit
this
your-
is who we're going.
correct, it could be at the same
Yeah.
location, it has to be a different permittee or a
And you need
different.
whoever's, not the location, but you need whoever the people are that are organizing and hosting the event to be the applicant.
Correct.
Because they're the ones at the end of the day, who they submit the application and they're accountable and responsible for doing what's in that application.
When Harley Davidson did come, it was Harley Davidson and Curry Tech, when they did come, they came to Kildapple Hills, and they had multiple event sites. They had something at Pigman's, they had something at Portical, and they had some music thing at Ramada. And the Ramada was inside, it didn't matter. It was parked, it wasn't outside, we didn't have to deal with that. But they came with a very specific list, but the applicant was Harley Davidson.
Okay.
Even though it was gonna be at the Portical and at Pigman's and at Ramada. And I know charitable events a lot go to Ramada also, and there's much more than 4 a year.
Just for example, most of these vendors, they might be in Florida one week, they might be in West Virginia the next, they might be in North Carolina next. I don't see them coming down a month or 2 in advance and applying for a permit to be in his parking lot.
An event coordinator, people that do these big events, yes, they do.
I'm
They
not, well, I
absolutely
mean,
do.
talking about separate vendors. He might have.
But the event organizer is gonna have his list of vendors. An event organizer is not gonna let any vendor come drive up and take his money from the people that he's contracted with. He's just not gonna do
They wouldn't
it.
be the ones submitting the application, they would do whatever they need to with Harley Davidson or whoever the host of Bike Week is. Bike Week submits the application. In that case, they're not filling out all of this.
It's not a
but
free-
they
it's not a
register
free-for-all.
with whoever organizes Bike Week. They do have to do that, they can't just, if not, they would be.
The Bike Week, the people that have signed up to be vendors for Bike Week would be very upset with the organizers if anybody could come in and set up anywhere and take the money that they've invested in being part of this huge event. So the organizers of these large events are very aware of making application and giving lists of vendors. And people that aren't on their list, we have to tell them that they can't do what they're doing.
Being a non-charitable event that you said that you guys will be talking about and okaying, it still has to go through and be okayed by the administrators before it gets to you to be okayed, right?
But if you submit the application, even if they see something they don't like, it still has to come here for a decision to be made.
Yeah,
But
So
they
for
have to
example,
know.
they would go through all the vetting with police, fire, safety, planning, all the things to illustrate or tell us if they have any concerns of what's submitted. But by the time it comes here, this would be the decision-making group to say, okay, well, this is a big deal, we can't look the other way with this, but maybe we could have some little flexibility here. That's how that would work.
I like that idea because ironically, I was at Roosters, the chef and the GM 3 years ago when there wasn't enough parking. Even though the grass area in the back, all the parking up front and the extra parking next door still wasn't enough.
And the reason I like it is because it will give a public opportunity to process this too. So we would advertise it, it would be on a committee agenda. If citizens had concerns that we were gonna approve something that they had grave concern that we're not acting in the best interest, they would have a forum to come share, hey, this isn't, or on the opposite, wow, we would love for you to do this, thanks so much, please approve this application. So I think it's a good process, but because, as you can even tell from this discussion, there's so much ambiguity, you can't put this, we couldn't write this specifically enough and allow the flexibility that it appears the board wants
For the non-charitable.
for non-charitable, correct?
Or
Charitables have run pretty smooth here in the town, to be honest with you. We haven't had any major issue with charitable events that I've been made aware of.
I think as long as I would be on the board, however long that is, I think I'd be fairly liberal in allowing things, because I think it's being done a lot of other places, it seems to be working, even as far as food trucks, I don't wanna go there tonight, but, I think these things are good. I did a lot of art shows over the years, I haven't done any recently, but, the vendors liked it, the organizations that profited from it liked it, the people that lived it and went to the thing liked it, and I think that's something that we should get final look at and decide if we should do it. And if it came to that, unless there's something glaring that was wrong, I think I'd be fairly liberal in allowing it. And I don't know, I'm getting the feeling that we may feel that way.
I like that process too. I know the concerns and the comments that I had that came to me were from specific businesses that wanted to do it. For example, one of them was Roosters, and John, I think they came to you as well. And they wanted to set up a vendor, in their lot. And I've had other businesses that have come to me and want to set up a vendor in their lot. And that's where, some of the discussion that's been had in the past came up with forgiving 10% or 15%. I've even heard some other people mention more. I do like the public review process and availability to look at that. I think we need to do a lot more work on this. I think it's pretty confusing by looking at what's proposed here. So, I don't think I'm ready to act on this tonight, but that would be my only comments.
No, I wouldn't want to act on it either, and I agree, it's not real, maybe not be real specific, but I don't know how specific we want to get, because we want to have, I think, I should speak for myself, I would like to have some kind of leeway when we get these things. As long as it's kind of in the ballpark of these pages, I think we can allow it. If you get too specific, I think it gets they submit this whole thing, there's 100 items, and there's one of them that's not right, and they get rejected.
Right.
So we should have the opportunity to say, well, you got 99 right, so, you can have the one.
I agree with that.
So going to what's before us tonight, if you compare that to, if you compare this to what was there, this is cleaner than what we had. I understand you're saying you don't wanna act on this, but I think staff needs specific guidance on what's still confusing you so they can make it even better, if that's what you want.
And I feel like I need to, I hear y'all, I agree, cause obviously this is the way I've heard it. But the non-charitable events coming to you guys with that latitude is exactly what y'all seem to want, and I agree. I do feel like I need to make clear that is not what is applied to charitable events. Okay? Charitable events have regulations that are outlined in this ordinance that staff does administrative review, and we approve based on the rules and regulations in this ordinance. The rules and regulations in this ordinance for charitable events, regardless of season, is they cannot use required parking for charitable events.
And that is the ordinance that's currently in place.
Yes, sir.
What is in front of you is just trying to clean up the ordinance that's currently in place. We were not asking you to act on this evening. We were simply asking for direction based on the previous conversations that we've had at the prior meetings.
So you'd have full latitude for non-charitable or all 100% for-profit events where 100% of the profits are not being donated. But for charitable events, the parking regulations are written in the ordinance. There's not that latitude that's been given to staff. So if that's still something that y'all would like to change, we have to do it in the ordinance. Okay? I feel like that we were,
That's for a 100% charitable event. Right. Well, a
Either
charitable
way,
event
even
is
if it-
100%.
whether it has
If it's any
vendors or
less
no,
than that,
vendors or no vendors, if it's a charitable special event, it has parking regulations. It either has to be an excess parking or the business has to be closed so that the parking lot can be utilized. That is the regulation that's on the books now.
And
Okay.
access parking can be on-site or off-site with permission.
Right.
So,
And that's for
so
charitable.
Ramada Inn closed down for a charitable event, is that what you're saying?
Ramada Inn does their events inside. Their required parking is covered already because it's an indoor event. If Roosters did their event inside, they don't have to close, obviously, they're using their required parking for it's when you move something outside and you have required parking for the square footage inside and you're adding basically another whole event that you're using the required parking and you need additional parking. That's the crux of the ordinance, is that either we're gonna shut the business and you can use your required parking because it's not required anymore, you're not open, or it's inside and therefore that's fine, or it's gotta be parking in excess, or you have to have an agreement with a adjacent parking area that says that you can use it and it meets your required parking,
Or we can change the ordinance.
or you can change the ordinance.
We can change the ordinance.
Right.
And review it.
Let me ask I want to ask Mark one thing. If you were involved twice, once at Roosters and once in your new place, who did you contact? Vendor, did you go through Harley, or, I'm just curious how that works.
I'll be honest with you, when I was at Roosters, I couldn't remember.
You
the
know,
name.
so you're not familiar
I
with
did
it?
the paperwork and we talked about, as I remember, you had to have one parking space for every 100 square feet inside the building. And Roosters is huge. And
Well,
one of my arguments was a third of that building is not used. It's a banquet room that there's no people in there all the time, which was ample parking for the building itself. Plus, behind, you've got the grass area where they park, and then John's overflow parking in his office where there's signage.
so you brought up another question not for me now, but, so have you talked to anybody as far as possibly coming to Dare Center?
Well,
Or are you still preliminary?
I spoke with Harley Davidson, but I don't think they're sponsoring I don't think they're doing it this year.
So I'm just wondering where he would go to find vendors to do it. I'm still thinking that there's.
Well, again, do you have to go through a coordinator. And
I
again,
don't know, that's my
let
question.
me
How,
reiterate the fact that
how does it work?
as a small business owner.
He's not doing it
it's-
for charity, so that would come to you. Y'all would decide, okay?
And as a small business owner in the Dare Center, it's not in my best interest to, and just have this willy-nilly out of control parking lot fiesta that puts a black eye on KDH. I don't want that. I would like to be something good, family-friendly, nice, that builds a name for itself and people come back every year. It's not in my best interest to just have one big blowout and you know, you guys look at my business as a black eye on KDH. I don't
We'll
want
to
that.
apply again next year. I might take care of that. But I'm still really confused about where he would go to get somebody to come be a vendor. And the other thing was, just like,
Well, there's
for
also,
example,
I was approached by non-Harley Davidson vendors when I was at Roosters. As a matter of fact, I only had, the vendor that I wanted was like it was one 30, 40-foot tent. And I didn't go through a coordinator and nobody,
that's the issue I've got, is how that really works when it comes down to who he's talking to for a vendor or.
Well, if he didn't go through someone and wanted to do something completely independent on his own, he would just submit an application.
and if you just, if you
That's
were-
fine. I don't know how Bike Week handles that. I mean, they can't tell him as a business, he can't do his own special event. So,
That's-
I mean, that's what the application process would allow as well.
And I think this
That's
will,
all I need to know there, but, I'm sorry, one last thing. So, just for example, what he was talking about at Roosters, if they've got a portion of their restaurant that they could shut down, could they do that to create allowable parking spots?
Again, I think if he makes an application and it comes to us as a non-special event, that's gonna be the board's decision.
We could use
You're gonna
that.
have that latitude to
Okay, great,
factor that
great.
in.
Isn't that kind of what happened, like what you're saying, Skip, is, sorry, what you were saying was, if you kind of work outside of the umbrella of the company that's coming here, isn't that why Bike Week fell apart? Because you had Vertigo and you had everybody competing against each other within a marketing group, and then you defeat the whole purpose of everybody creating an event that builds Dare County.
It's so spread out from
Yeah.
Currituck to Mains Harbor, I don't know how one coordinator would do. It's gotta be multiple.
They probably don't, there's probably an official set of events, and then people do their little rogue things on the side, and you police it as much as you can. Like, there's surf events like that, where there's the official tents, and then somebody does what they want on the side. That's between them to figure it out, just whether you're in the fold or you're not.
I mean, that's part of the problem. We're the center, but we're not being the center. We're not getting that benefit.
Well, and
Anyway, I'm good with that.
no, that's fine, but I mean, there's something, I will tell you, I mean, one thing that does concern me every time I see Bike Week, when you see the cars parked along the bypass and longboards and people then going on the other side and running across the bypass, I don't want that to be KDH, so I just, but that doesn't mean I'm against special events, but I think, I mean, Dare Center, we've already talked about, there's extra parking, that's great, I think there could be wonderful events, but I think, again, it's just gonna come to what the vote is here, but the big thing is to let people know, we do have an application process. We're not closed off in KDH. We aren't anti-special event. There's just a process to go through, and it starts by first determining, are you charitable, or are you doing it not as 100% charitable, and then go through that process.
I think Longboards actually blocks their property off for just bikes. So that, I mean, I don't see us going there and getting killed either. So they're creating a problem.
Right.
Kitty Hawk's just not addressing, in my opinion. I'm good. I think we're on the right track.
Mayor, I have a quick question. If somebody wanted to apply for a non-charity event, what is the name of the application they should fill out?
Special event application.
Special events, on the page 4, item
Definition of
B,
special events. We didn't put charitable special events, we just said special.
special event application.
Yes.
Yes, all right. I know we haven't addressed this directly, and there's no apprehension to do so, but I'm curious. Are food trucks considered itinerant vendors?
Yes.
Okay.
They could also be peddlers depending on if they're.
Well, if they're if they're stationary in a permitted area.
Yes.
Okay, so we're back to, we need to, if there's stuff that you don't think is clear enough, we need to be able to provide some specific guidance to staff. If you're not prepared to do that tonight, meaning you need some more time to know what's confusing and what's not, then we can do it as homework and bring it back to the next meeting and say, here's our specific guidance, but we just need to provide something concrete and tangible, then they could rework to, if things are still confusing.
I think the homework idea is the way to go. We've had a lot, I understand it a lot better than I did from a couple read-throughs and writing down some questions, and maybe another month to digest this, think about it, bring staff questions, and give the public more chance to, chime in as well.
Or meet with the staff anytime you'd like.
I agree.
I've got multiple questions throughout the pages, that I was not really sure about.
So, we'll put this back on the agenda for next meeting. Everybody can either, between now and then, if you have your homework, so to speak, ready before then, let's turn it into staff, because then they can work on it, which would be preferred. So
And if you have any questions, please call me. I'd be happy to meet with you or just answer quick questions on the phone. And as you go through and get new questions, I'd be happy to answer as many as you have.
And I think one of the other areas that guidance is gonna be needed is, it appears that there may be a consensus to do some, relief of the parking, and maybe kind of gauge what percentage, you're looking at for us for the next meeting. Okay, thank you. Great.
Thanks.
Thanks, Meredith.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
Meredith,
you.
for all your work.
Thank you all who came tonight on that agenda item, appreciate it. All right, we are now on to item 3 under new business, discussion on possible alternates on the planning board. So Debbie had prepared information on this, giving us some history on this item back to when it used to be a 5-member board with alternates. Then it was, a decision was made to make it a 7-member board without alternates, which is what's currently in place now for the planning board. So I'll open the floor for discussion, comments, thoughts.
Originally, I thought it was a pretty good idea, but I wasn't aware of where it come from 5 to 7. And I think the point's been made that it's, with 7, there's rarely not enough members for quorum. So, I've kind of changed my point of view just from hearing the history and what I see, where it came from. So I think probably we're okay where we're at, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I know when I was on the planning board for about 7 years. I don't think maybe once or twice we didn't have a quorum. Maybe not even then. Since we've been here, I don't think we've ever had an issue where there hasn't been enough people. And I think that adding any more people would be like from the Department of Redundancy.
I agree. I just, for me originally, it seemed like people left pretty often. There's 2 of them right here. So I think that's what was in my mind, thinking maybe an alternate would be good if somebody knew what was going on. But with you're right, with 7, even with 6, you've still got enough there to make decisions, and rarely is it 3 to 3 or anything like that on the planning board.
I got this idea and I supported it because of all the quality applicants we had last month for the open seat. We really had some really good people, a lot of them there. I get the feeling there this is not a popular idea, so, I do come to the majority of planning board meetings, and there's usually a chair or 2 open. There may be a quorum, but there's also empty seats, and I think from a side of encouraging participation in town and getting more people involved is a good thing, but if it's not popular, it's just an idea.
I think along those lines too, that's the way I was looking at it, was that it was a way to get people, excited and involved with the planning board, which we didn't have a lot of applicants at first, but now it seems like we've got a whole lot. So, that's where I was coming from. I'm good either way, but I was thinking it would be something that would get people excited and kind of fill the ranks.
And at my first experience with serving on the town was back with the zoning board of adjustment. Totally different board, 5 members, and you have an alternate, but the alternates didn't come unless the alternates were called. It didn't really foster more engagement. So if you were looking at something like this, and it gets to Chip Omni's point, then you're going to be, if you're gonna expect them to come and sit here every planning board meeting, even though they may never sit here, then you're gonna add an expense to the town, and, I love that we have had more people interested and that will make it easier when we have new vacancies to fill, especially for those who are coming to meetings and being engaged. I think that's wonderful. So I support the way it is now, which was the modification back from the 90s. So,
Is that something we need a motion on or
No.
consensus?
No change.
we're not changing it. Okay. We will move on to committee reports. And I have we all were given a memo this evening, and Sue is here. Sue, you requested to speak to this memo? Is that right? Okay. Would you like to? Welcome, Sue. She's the chair of the Community Appearance Commission.
Thank you. Sue Kelly, 211 Sea Village Lane. I think the memorandum is pretty self-explanatory. We would like to know whether you are interested in considering the possibility of having some sort of trash can at high-traffic places. Now, we mean high pedestrian traffic along 158. The concept of having people in cars trying to use trash cans on the bypass is sort of absurd, but, so it's pretty obvious we mean pedestrians. But 3rd Street comes to my mind, 5th Street comes to my mind, places probably that have the push button to get the pedestrian light crossing. We're so pleased with the way this whole sidewalk thing has gone. And you know, we're always trying to do stuff about trash, and right now we're all in trash mode because Trash Attack is so soon, that we thought we'd bring this to you to see if you would like to have the town look into it. Obviously, cost is a factor. We are not envisioning messes and messes of these things. Probably couldn't afford them. Steve Albright was at our last meeting, and I think he would be willing to pursue looking into it if that is your desire. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. I do have a couple announcements about CAC things, which I am willing to hold to public comment time or whatever your desire is.
I think now's an appropriate time.
Okay. Well, let me just mention these things. I think probably just about everybody in this room knows these things. The poster contest for Trash Attack, the deadline for receiving a poster is a week from today, by the end of business closing. That's the 18th. And it's supposed to be on your standard 22-inch piece of poster board, and it's open to any students in DARE K through 12. And I think we're going to have some good ones. We always do. And it's always fun to see them. Trash Attack is, of course, April 6th. If it rains, it's the next day, the 7th, Sunday. Our next Kick Butt Committee is coming up. It is March 20 at 6 p.m. in this room. And you know, that's a group that we let anybody in the town who wants to come join us. And if they want to stick around and work with us, we really appreciate it. And we do have people coming in to that meeting. And our next Community Appearance Commission meeting is Tuesday, the 26th, and that is at 8:30 in the morning in this room. We had some conflicts with timing over that. I hope you've all seen this, and I hope you all think this is as cool as I think it is.
Oh, you're not pointing to me?
Well, I don't think of you as it, Colleen, so behind Colleen, wearing a similar color is, and they look great. They're out there, okay? They're on and most of them are closer, I think most of them seem to be closer to the beach road than they are to actually getting on the sand, which I think is a great idea. So town staff is doing a fabulous job with these, and I think that looks really cool, and I hope you do too. And I believe that's all I had to say. If anybody has any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. But please, we appreciate your consideration of just looking into the trash can thing. Okay, thank you so much.
Good question. So, you're only looking at 3 or 4 of these, is that correct?
Probably. It's gonna depend a lot on what
My
they
mind
cost.
is Collington Road. I mean, there's always a bunch of people on bicycles and standing at that light. It seems like that might be a good place, but.
Well, yes, but you know, it's so dangerous, really. People walking and biking on Collington Road until they get that the new road fix. It's really quite dangerous. We did actually think about Bay Drive as a possibility, but basically I think maybe as a start, just a few of these on places in the bypass.
Seems like I saw one, isn't there one outside here on the road?
There's one right here on Collington Road.
Yeah, that's-
One at the corner down there, Veterans Drive.
And those things are pretty wind resist proof and all that, right? That would be my next concern, make sure it's something along those lines, but I think those would hold up pretty well.
So I guess the decision tonight is, does the board want to ask staff to look into these, and am I,
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
seeing yes?
And they can do a lot of
Okay,
the
and then
research
they'll
and
bring
answer.
information back to us and analyze all of this.
Right, and answer the questions that you have.
Well, what I remember being the biggest concern is, not the design and the speaking spots, was getting permission from neighboring businesses to let town trucks go on park so they can maintain the trash cans. That was gonna kind of be the biggest hurdle. I can't imagine any business really being thrilled with this, because litter is a challenge for everybody. And I want to part, one more thing, those posts and the signs are all, recycled materials from the town. The only real expenses we have is the decal and the zip ties and maybe the paint on the actual, the receptacle itself is also donated. So there's a lot of recycling going on in those posts, which is really kind of falls in harmony with what we're trying to accomplish with this whole program.
One last thing I forgot to mention is that next month we anticipate having a press release that will expand what we're doing to a broader circle of folks, so we can get some good publicity for our town.
Thank you so much, Sue.
Thank you.
Sue.
Other committee reports this evening?
The only other thing I wanted to mention, Mayor, was the meeting we had on the 14th for the stormwater. I did have a conversation with Alan Moran, and he's receptive to setting up a meeting with the DOT staff after we finalize what we're gonna do as far as getting staff to identify areas to present to them, which I thought was very, very good step in the right direction.
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
I have, tomorrow morning I have, at the tourism board, I have a steering committee meeting, and I have a grants committee meeting. And then Thursday is the regular tourism board meeting, and, I'll be able to give you a full report on those things at our next meeting. There was no video report from the February meeting, or otherwise I'd be presenting that tonight. And, John asked me earlier about the property that is being looked at for acquisition. There hasn't been a decision made on that yet. There's been offers and counter offers, but it looks like it will go either way, maybe within the next month. So it's the Dairy Queen property where the ropes course is.
Exciting stuff.
Thank you. And information from the Government Education Channel Committee that I serve on is actually in the consent agenda. You probably saw that, looking at the proposed budget and the interlocal shared use agreement and standard operating procedure. Okay, we'll move on then to Commissioner's agenda. Commissioner Gray?
Also, I spoke with Alan Moran again about the traffic light at Lake Drive. And they are getting ready to do another traffic study to get new numbers here very, very quickly. He indicated that they felt the numbers they had were from a while back, and that they would be aided by having new numbers as far as the traffic study, as numbers and cars and so forth move by there. So he's gonna get that in motion as well. I just wanna say, I attended the fire department event the other night, and it was a good event. A lot of heroes that are working right here in the town. We had one that was given the Firefighters Award of the Year, Rodney Rawls, and you can't ask for a better employee and showcase for us to put out front. So I just want to say, Chief, that was a very good opportunity to be out there with you guys. Thank you very much. That's all.
I don't think he sleeps.
No.
He's a busy guy,
Yeah, he is very busy.
great guy.
was agreeing with Terry about the fireman's ball the other night. I don't think I was spoke enough for one night, so I'll pass it down.
Thank you.
I also, I really enjoyed the fireman's banquet. It was a good time, always is. Yeah, I took, with a family of 5 and 2-month-olds, it's not easy to get everyone together to go places, so I just took my daughter and I for an evening together, and she enjoyed it, and I enjoyed having that time with her. And she definitely enjoys attention, which she got lots of in that venue. A couple of weeks ago, back on February 27th, I had the pleasure of attending the League of Women Voters seismic testing forum in this room. I learned an awful lot about the threat. We think about drills and spills, but that seismic testing is some pretty dangerous stuff. I didn't realize just how loud that sound that it's supposed to generate is. We had one person ask a question, if a human being was to be submerged in water while that seismic testing going on, what would happen? You'd die, it'd kill you, it's that loud. So very informative, and it really opened my eyes to just how serious and dangerous seismic testing is alone. Forget all the other things. Thank you, Mayor, for lobbying in DC against offshore seismic testing and drilling. Really appreciate you doing that. Matt, he's not. I enjoyed seeing a picture of Matt in a suit. That was special. Don't get to see that too often. He was looking pretty sharp.
When I came out, we were meeting outside of the Department of the Interior, and had to take a cab from my hotel to the Department of the Interior. And the cab driver pulled up, and I'm like, I think that's the guy I'm meeting, but he looks awfully different than normal. Because he also was really cold, so he had a hat on at first, like a toboggan. But anyway, he looked sharp in his suit.
That's all I have.
I don't have anything special, but I just wanted to touch on what John said. Did y'all see in the news where the guy at the one hearing, I wish I could remember his name, had the air horn?
Yes.
I did,
And he had it, nobody saw it, but when he went and he did one of those air horns like you use on a boat. And of course, everybody was just, shocked. And then one of the people that was there testified that those sounds they're putting underwater, I'm gonna say 100,000 times as loud. Or 10, it was some ridiculous number. That, and if there's anything near that, I mean, if they have ears, they're gonna bleed, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just asinine, if you ask me.
And that's it? All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to Mayor's agenda. There are 3 proclamations in your packet this evening. The first is to declare April 2019 as National Autism Awareness Month in Kittle Hills. The second is to declare April 2019 as Child Abuse Prevention Month in Kittle Hills. And the third proclamation is to declare April 8th through the 12th as Week of the Young Learner. Those proclamations, as I mentioned, are in your packet. We are blessed in Dare County to have a Children Youth Partnership that does really takes the lead in our community for promoting the interest for children, young children and families. And these proclamations also support the great work that they're doing in our community. The last page there shows the display that they do each month in April, signifying the cases of child abuse or neglect in Dare County. Each child represents a reported case. And we'll be seeing in April our staff representing National Autism Awareness Month with the heart display that they'll put out. So with those, I ask for, or I'll make a motion that we adopt all 3 proclamations.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. And then just a quick update to the DC trip. People have asked. I believe, and Matt and I spoke after our various meetings, that this trip, whether just in spirit or not, was more productive. Our message was better received this year than it was. Tillis's office, we met with representatives there, specifically stated, even though this is not necessarily what's fully embraced, but if there is not going to be an economic benefit coming directly back into Dare County, which currently nothing is on the table to have an economic benefit, then they would not support it. So while we would love for them to shift further their position to just completely be opposed to offshore drilling and seismic testing, at least it has shifted a little bit to state that they would not support it if there's not a financial plan that benefits, and right now there's not. BOEM also, I thought was noteworthy, has the utmost respect for the Surfrider Foundation. They talked about how, I can remember from years ago, a few years ago, when they hosted a listening session here at Kettleville Hills, we had the greatest turnout of even large cities up and down the East Coast where they were doing these forums. They respect the data that's presented when we go, as well as the case and, really why we oppose it. It's not just this heart-feeling thing. We have data, and as I shared, when I had the opportunity to speak with them, same message. We don't have a fallback economy. This is a proven, tourism is a proven industry, and why would you risk something that's proven with something that is really unknown and has catastrophic risks? So those were kind of good takeaways. The Department of the Interior started by saying they really value local and state input. That was a different message than last year when we were there. So it gives us hope, but it also, as Matt indicated tonight, stresses how much we need to make sure our voice continues to be heard. We did hear from the Deputy Director, Walter Cruikshank, that they are starting to plan area visits again. If we end up being included in the second rollout that could come any day now from the plan, we could expect to have a listening or public hearing type session here in Kettleville Hills, and that likely will be, there's already some tentative dates thrown out because they're looking at hotels. So he said that doesn't mean we are in, but they had to start looking at dates and venues in case we are, because if we get too close to the tourist season, they know it would be hard to find a venue. So it's definitely a worthwhile trip. But one last takeaway for us as we continue to advocate, and for anyone in the audience, or the most valuable comments that you can make aren't form letters. They are a personal email that gives a bullet or two of science or data. That's really what's going to drive the decision. So if you can put in your comments about tourism dollars or a specific threat to the industry or the way of life, or they look at social issues, health issues, that's what's going to resonate stronger when they're collecting their comments. So, okay, with that, we will move on to town manager's agenda.
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Town
Before you move on, I'd like to mention, you mentioned surf riders, and I have a lot of respect for them. And one of the things you said is their information is accurate, almost 100% accurate, and they don't speak in hyperbole. It's an alarming situation, but they don't speak as alarmists, and I think that it helps them to be heard, because they're not out there acting like crazy people. They really do a great job. And also, I would like to mention that, and I mention it, I think every year we do this, that our younger daughter is works at UNC in an autism study program. She's been in it quite a few years. And so I'm very familiar with, through her, I'm very familiar with how devastating this is. And she deals with a lot of families and really young kids, and it's a very emotional thing for her and us. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to town attorney's agenda.
That's for me, Mayor.
Okay, the consent agenda.
Yes, ma'am. This evening on the consent agenda, we have the minutes from February 20th, 2019. Budget amendment to record disc golf sponsor donations through February 2019. Recordation of an MOU between Kettleville Hills and Dare County regarding relocation of the public water supply line to be placed under the culvert located at 1634 North Croatan. The approval of the consent agenda will record the approval of the memorandum of understanding. The monthly report from January 2019, as the mayor alluded to earlier, the Government Education Access Channel Committee 2019-2020 proposed budget and interlocal agreement update. Approval of the consent agenda will record approval of the budget, operating current TV's Government and Educational Channel. It'll also record approval of the updated intershared use agreement standard operating procedure reflecting the name change of member of Coastal Studies Institute, ECU. Staff recommends approval of the consent agenda as presented, and a motion would be in order.
Thank you. Your motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signal saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I did have a couple other things. I did want to mention and recognize a couple of families, KDH staff families. Scott Baxley in our Buildings and Grounds Division and his wife Samantha are proud grandparents for the third time. Lila Joy Parks was born on February 20th, and mom and baby are happy and healthy. And also congratulations to our town planner, Ryan Lang, and his wife Courtney, who have just welcomed Owen Huntley Lang on March 6th. He and his older sister Maren are doing well, so great news to share with those additions to families. And also, really excited, and you can imagine my household is excited, about the disc golf course dedication that's upcoming. So if you can mark your calendars for that. We're excited about the dedication of the Casey R. Logan Disc Golf Course on Saturday, March 30th at 1 p.m. Members of the Logan family, along with many volunteers and sponsors who have made the course a reality, will be on hand for the ribbon cutting ceremony. The event will be rain or shine, and the public is invited. The course is located on Veterans Drive behind the football stadium. Just keep following the path behind that. Parking will be at the middle school parking lot, and a shuttle will run for the event. So really excited. And if you haven't been back there, it's just spectacular what's been done. So, and then also currently, if you haven't, or tonight, since it is going to be dark when we go outside, you can stop by Frog Pond at Aviation Park. The Buildings and Grounds staff have put up a giant illuminated shamrock to celebrate St. Patrick's Day parade, or St. Patrick's Day. And of course, the parade is this coming Sunday in Nags Head. With that, it brings us to the second time set aside for public comment this evening. Would anyone wish to speak at this public comment time? Yes, welcome.
Excuse me, my name is Toby Gonzalez. I own 1006. I live in Kitty Hawk, but our restaurant's in Kitty Hills. Just had some questions because you guys were talking about relaxing the parking in certain areas. My only question also is if, I think it's on the non-charitable events, if we could also work, if we could think about also maybe it not being every 30 days, or if we could have consecutive days. So if we were to do a itinerant vendor, that we could do food trucks in a location that the business owner or the property owner requests us to come on their property, but instead of being able to do it consecutive days. That's if we're gonna look at relaxing the parking, because that seems to be one of the bigger issues is the parking. But if we're also gonna look at relaxing the parking, if we could also look at consecutive days so that you could go and provide a food truck service from a property owner on Monday through Friday, or Monday through 7 days a week, whatever. But if we could kind of work around that, if you're relaxing the parking. So I think that might be something to kind of cover, kill two birds with one stone. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? Okay. As far as response to public comment, again, thank you all for coming out tonight, especially those of you who came specifically for an agenda item. We appreciate that because we do appreciate hearing your input, and obviously we'll continue with discussions on this. Anything else this evening from the board? Okay, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much.